Hello, it's me again, and I'm back with our familiar friend, our mass-produced Megamorphix. So after looking at the last tutorial, you were thinking, okay, fine, so you've got all of this stuff going on about parities and false equivocations, and all that might be interesting, I guess, but really, I don't care about any of that stuff. As a matter of fact, I would rather dispense with all of that. Forgetting the whole concept of what all that means and what that theory means, can't I just solve this without any parity or any false equivocation at all? Is there a way to eliminate all of that and just do a much more straightforward solve? And the answer is yes, actually there is. In order to do a completely parity-free solve of this puzzle, there's a couple of concepts that we have to understand. So we discussed the notion of why we got parity to begin with. And by parity, I mean parity problems, which is a problem of reduction. When I took an even layer puzzle, which has an even layer parity, and reduced it to an odd layer puzzle with an odd layer parity, I found myself running into a parity problem because I scrambled and reduced this into a scrambled form of this that could not be solved. So how then would be the best way of avoiding parity problems altogether? Well, the way to avoid parity problems is simply don't reduce it to a puzzle that's of a different parity, an odd parity, because that won't necessarily work. So instead of that, why don't we reduce this to a puzzle of the same parity? Go from one even layer puzzle to a lower version even layer puzzle and solve it as that. In other words, instead of reducing it to a 3x3, reduce it to a 2x2. Reduce it to a Megamorphix, which is this puzzle over here. If I did that, then I wouldn't run into any parity problems because I would have kept the parity with my reduction. So that's one concept to understand, that if you wanted to avoid parity problems, you'd have to reduce it to a puzzle of the same parity, which is as a 2x2. So that bears in mind the second concept, and that has to do with the strategy of an AI puzzle, an AI cube. Now, without getting too much into details, believe it or not, when you solved an AI puzzle, what you are actually doing is you are taking a 4x4, and whether you realized it or not, you were reducing it to a 2x2. That's the entire AI strategy. And that bears to mind the strategies that I had to use to GR Cubed puzzle series of the bandaged Megamorphix series, version 1, version 2, and version 3. So really what I can propose is doing the same thing with this, only a much more simple version than these guys. The good news is that the AI solve of this puzzle is easier than these guys, and much easier than this, because you have similar pieces. You've got equivocal pieces. So what's a quick way of going through that? Well, the first step that we're going to do is go ahead and do a scramble. So we're going to go ahead and scramble this guy up. Okay, so the key to this solve is, well, you're going to find that it's simple at its concept. It's really just sliding U techniques and RIDA RDs. That's really all it is. But I'm going to go ahead and walk through it in case you're having some difficulties with it. So I'm going to start off with a side, and I'm just going to do one simple reduction of a center. So I've got this yellow and green one, so we'll start off with that. I'm going to need to put a yellow one here or a green one here. Plop. And now I've got the other yellow and green one here. To match that up, I'm going to put the yellow here since I already put a green one over here. And let's see if I can quickly find one. Okay, so what I'm doing is nothing new from the previous tutorial. Clink. Okay, now that I have that, I'm going to join these guys together, and there you have it. So I have my one and only pure center reduction. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start assembling my first layer. So I'm just going to do, as I would a layer by layer approach, do the first layer here. So what lines up where? Now it would be nice if I can get it from the top, but not really necessary. So what actually lines up here? What kind of pieces line up where they're supposed to be here? Well, what I can do is first assemble what edges are supposed to come into here. This is already in, so I need the small yellow to come into here. Do I have it up here somewhere? Nope, but I do have it here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this up to the top layer, move it in line so it can come down here. True sliding U technique, down on the right, slide it to the left, down on the left, back to the right, slide it up on the right, back to the left, slide it up here, and kersplat. That's there. This edge is already in, this corner rather is already in, so we're good. What comes here is another small orange one, yellow one rather, but this one in the meantime can make it here. So this to make it down to here. And even if I didn't know that, I would know that the color has to be orange, but this shape fits snugly over here. So down on the right, slide it to the left, down on the left, slide it back to the right, up on the right, slide to the left, up on the left, slide it back here. So we're good. How about the small one here? The small yellow. Let's take it from this guy here. So I'm just going to move this to the top, like I do. All the way to the top. And then I'm going to bring this down in this position here. So bring this down here, down on the left, swing it to the right, down on the right, back to the left, bring this up, turn, and up. Okay, so again, sliding U techniques there. How about this corner? This is going to be the one that has the orange and green, which is this. Is this the correct one? Nope. So where's another one with an orange and green? That's over here. So let's move this up to the top. And I'm going to take this, move it down to here. So swing it down, up from the right, swing it to the left, down on the left, back to the right, up from the right, back to the left, up from the left, swing it back here. So we're good. Now it's going to have to come in here as a trapezoidal green one. Do I have one up here? If not, while I still can, I can just move this one into place. This will fall down to here. Down on the left, swing it to the right. Down on the right, back to the left. Now understand, and I hope I'm not moving too fast through this, but basically I'm putting in the specific layers as it's supposed to come down. Sometimes I move it from the middle and then swing it to the end. So anyway, a small green, which will be this, but this is facing the wrong way. If that's the case, I can move it to here, move it in from here, and go 2 down on the right, swing it to the left, 2 down on the left. At the end, back to the right, swing it in the middle here, 2 from the middle, back to the left here, 2 from over here. Okay, so that's in. I have to find the green corner. Green corner is right over here. So what I'm going to do is take this, swing it in from the right, swing it to the left, down on the left, back to the right, up on the right, back to the left, up on the left. So once again, sliding U technique. So I only have a couple more to go. I need to put this one in. So I'm going to slide this in from the left here, or I'm going to swing this in from the left here, swing it in from the left, slide this to the right, move it down on the right, back to the left, up on the left, back to the right, up on the right. Okay, so this is in. I've got my turtle shell almost done. So now this needs to come into place. This is in the right place. It's just rotated wrong. So this is just a matter of doing R-I, D-I, R-D, R-I, D-I, R-D. Okay, so I've got this first layer done. Okay, now that I've got the first layer, keeping my perspective, I want to get this second layer in. So this is already in, this is already in. So I have to decide what's going to go where. The piece that's going to come here is going to be solid green. I always look for above here if there's anything there that can help out, and there isn't. This has to be another trapezoidal type green. Can't find that here. So this might take a little bit of hunting to do, but let's say I did want to find a green that's here. So how about this green? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, move this to the top, and then move it down here. So I'm going to move it up to there. That's from the, I moved it up from the right, slide it to the left, up on the left, back to the right, down on the right, back to the left, down on the left. So that didn't disrupt anything here, but it did move this up to here. So now all I have to do is move this into position to come down to here. So slide it down here from the right, slide this to the slide this to the left, almost went the wrong way, and then down on the left. Back to the right, so moving through the middles here, back to the right, and then up on the left, and sliding it back over here. So again, it's my first layer, these are in. I have to find the green little one over here. If I can't find it there, I've got to extract it from this layer if it's here, and it's this. So let's take this guy, let's move him up to here. So I'm going to move up on the right, slide the U to the left, then up on the left. But it had to be through the middle because that's the layer that it was in. Slide it back, turn this down, back over here, it was down on the end, and this is down on the middle. Okay, so now this is up here, so it's really just a matter of getting this to here. And the way that's going to work, let's see, this might be the wrong one. Yeah, so this represents an edge. These are edges only. And the way that I can get this edge in is to bring this down here the way that I would a 3x3. So that's going U, R, UI, RI, U, I. Fi, U, F. Okay, so that's in. Now to get a center in, so to get the edges in, I just do the edge algorithm, the edge algorithm. To get the centers in, I do the sliding U technique thingy. So this one is going to be nothing from up here. Once again, it's going to be green. And that green is going to come from here somewhere. So these are centers. The green center that I'm looking for is over here. So I'm going to have to put this up here to bring it down here. So I'm going to take this. Now this is on the right side here. So move it up from the right to bring it here. Swing it to the left, up on the left. Back to the right, down on the right, back to the left, down on the left. Didn't touch anything here, but it did take this guy and moved it up here. So now he can come down to here. So I'm going to move it down from the left, swing it to the right, down on the right, swing to the left, up on the left, back to the right, up on the right. So again, I moved it from the middle here. Okay, so this is in. Now I've got to get this guy. This is going to be the green and blue. Do I have a green and blue up here? I don't. So I'm going to have to extract it from this side. Well, I have a green and blue here and a green and blue here. So they're both on this side here. Which one is it? Well, I think it's probably... It's hard for me to visualize. It's one of these two. So let's go ahead and take this and move it up here. We're moving from the middle, so those are the layers I'm going to swing. So up from the middle left, swing to the right, up from the middle right, back to the left, down on the left, back to the right, down on the right. Okay, now we see if this goes here, and it does. So we swing it from the middle, down on the right, swing it to the left, down on the left, back to the right, up on the right, back to the left, up on the left, swing it back. Okay, so we're building this brick by brick. This guy has to be this blue. Well, so it's going to be an edge. These are edge pieces. So this is going to slide down to here, like this. So that's going to be the simple edge placing algorithm to the second layer. UR, UIRI, UIFI, UF. So that's good. Now this is going to be a yellow. But this is going to be the yellow and blue. The big area here, when it goes along this large trapezoidal one, the center that matches with this is going to be one that has two colors. So yellow and blue, wouldn't you know, I don't have it there, so maybe I can extract it from here. It's one of these guys. Which one is it? Well, I think it's probably this one. So let's take this and move this up here. Move it from the middle right, swing it to the middle left, up on the middle left, back to the right, down on the right, back to the left, down on the left. Okay, let's see if my hunch was correct. This moves down to here, so put it down from the middle right, left rather, swing it to the right, down on the middle right, swing it back to the left, up on the middle left, back to the right, up on the right. So you can see there isn't a lot of hunting around for it, you just have to identify and find pieces. So this one is going to be a pure yellow, which is this guy, down from the middle right, swing it to the left, down on the middle left, swing it to the right, up on the middle right, swing it to the left, up to the middle left, and splat. Okay, now this is an edge piece, it's this guy. This has to match up with this. So this is the edge that has to come down here. This will be dragged with it, but we don't really care. So we're doing this layer by layer right now. This is the second layer of our layer by layer solve, if you notice. Okay, next we put the small, well, yeah, there's going to be a center, so this will be a solid orange center. It's going to come from here. So let's take this and move them up to here. Same sliding U technique. Down, turn, and down. Okay, now that that's up, we just slide this down here. So, down on the left, swing it to the right, down on the right. Swing it back to the left, up on the left, back to the right, up on the right. Okay, so we're filling all these guys in. I have one more to go. It's the red and yellow. It's this guy. So let's move him up. Okay. Alright, so now this guy's going to move down here to complete my second layer. Same technique. Your biggest problem with this, if you're familiar with layer by layer, is perspective. And turn. And the snagging. That's another limitation. Okay, so we did the first layer, we did the second layer. You saw that that was no problems, no algorithms at all actually, just swinging it in and turning it out of the way. So now we have these two layers here. This is done just like an AI puzzle. But it's even easier actually. Because what we're doing ultimately is we're reducing it to this guy over here, a 2x2. So here's what I would do. Get these guys in first. And the way that you do an AI solve is you take the corners and you match it with edges. So let's start off with this. We need to match it with a large red edge. Well, yeah, so a large trapezoidal edge. And it's looking like it's probably this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this down. The way that I'm going to do that, and this is what you have to bear in mind, we're already going to start moving this as a 2x2. So it's right through the center. These moves over here. So what I'm going to do is I have to place large 2x2x2 blocks. And these 2x2x2 blocks are basically going to look like these guys. Or like these guys. That's my 2x2x2 block. So we have to bear that in mind. So the 2x2x2 block with this is I'm going to put all of these guys in, but they have to be correct in terms of this corner over here. So this is the corner that's going to define that 2x2x2 block. This is the corner that's going to define this 2x2x2 block. So it's a fun perspective bender. What I have to do is I have to move it into a red trapezoidal piece, which is this. So to move this down, I have to rotate this 2x2x2 block down. I'm going to do that by going RI, DI, R, D, RI, DI, R, D. It's not down yet, so we do it again. RI, DI, R, D, RI, DI, R, D. Now, notice that my two layers here have been scrambled, but not really. I still have maintained my 2x2x2 blocks. The only reason why I did that layer by layer for the first two layers is that was the easiest, quickest way that I had of placing 2x2x2 blocks on the bottom side. So I still have those blocks. It'll always be there. It's just not in its solved state. But the 2x2x2 blocks are still we've maintained the integrity of that, and that was the only reason. You didn't have to do it layer by layer, but see how easy it was to get these 2x2x2 these 2 by 2 by 2 blocks all the way around. So this basically will come into here. Now that I've lined this up, I now want to turn this around so that this, when I move the top, doesn't separate these out. So once again, R-I, D-I, R-D, R-I, D-I, R-D. Now, here's how I did that. I accidentally happened to put this back in, but that was not my intention. I can now move this around, and this will be fine. So the next step in getting this 2 by 2 by 2 block is I've got to put these guys in. That's going to be a blue trapezoidal piece and a bicolored blue and red piece. So where's that going to be? Well, here is the blue and red. And here's a blue and red. So which one is it? Well, as I move this here, I see it's this one over here. So what I want to do is I want to take this and I want to join this to a blue trapezoidal piece. So let's take this and move this up. So we're going to do R-I, D-I, R-D, R-I, D-I, R-D. So R-I, D-I, R-D, R-I, D-I, R-D. Okay, so now that I have that there, I've got to find a blue trapezoidal piece and match it to this guy here. So let's see what's around here. Here's a blue trapezoidal piece, and here's one over here too. So there's a couple to choose from. This matches here just fine. So this is here okay. Once I put this in, I'm now going to match this to here. So I'm going to take this and move this down to here by doing R-I, D-I, R-D, R-I, D-I, R-D. Okay, I put this in, and as you can see, I've now built a 1 by 2 by 2 sheet. Once I've done that, I'm going to flip this up to here. R-I, D-I, R-D, R-I, D-I, R-D. And there that is. Now I just have to fill these guys in. All that's going to be is a green trapezoidal piece surrounding a green and red and a green and blue. So here's a green trapezoidal piece, here's a green and red, and here's a green and blue. Is this the correct one? I think it is. So I'm going to take this, put it into place over here. What I'm now going to do is turn this upside down so that this can join with the green and red. So I'm going to take this, do R-I, D-I, R-D, R-I, D-I, R-D. Once more. R-I, D-I, R-D. You don't have to do that D, but what the heck. So now I need to get this guy. Well, I don't think this is the right one. Actually, it is. So I need to take this and rotate it to here. R-I, D-I, R-D, R-I, D-I, R-D. This is ready. Move it into here. Now all I have to do is move this down to here. R-I, D-I, R-D, R-I, D-I, R-D. This puzzle loves to turn. One of my biggest dangers is turning it when I didn't mean to, or overturning it. Okay, move this in and bang. We've got ourselves another 1 by 2 by 2 block. So let's do the other one that's this color here. So the first step is this has to move into a trapezoidal piece, red. Let's move this red down. R-I-D-I, R-D, R-I-D-I, R-D. Okay, now when I move this in, I'm going to take this out momentarily, move it in. Now quickly move this top side so I can move this back. R-I-D-I, R-D, R-I-D-I, R-D, and we move it back. So now I want to fill these guys in. So that's a yellow trapezoidal piece with a yellow and red. It's actually this. This is the unit that I'm dealing with. That's why I wasn't getting anywhere with that. See, I had a little bit of issue with perspective there. R, D, and again. D, I, R, D. Okay, so now I can take this away from here. The way that this is going to work is I'm going to take this, I'm going to move this away from here. Now I'm going to take this and turn it upside down. As long as I'm not affecting this area or anywhere here, I can do that. So I'm going to take this here. So I moved it away. And now I'm going to take this, and I'm going to take this away from this configuration. R-I, D-I, R, D, R, I, D, I, R, D. Okay, I'm going to move this back for now because now I have these guys separated. What I have to do is I have to take this and move this to this area here. R, I, D, I, R, D, R, I, D, I, R, D. Okay. Now this yellow will not match up to here, as you can see. So I have to take this and move it to here. R, I, D, I, R, D, R, I, D, I, R, D. Okay, so now I'm going to take this, move them into here, and then take her down to here so I can move this back, because I knocked these guys out. R, I, D, I, R, D, R, I, D, I, R, D, and I can move this back. Okay, so this is in, I need to move this to here, I'll move it to here, and now I've got to move this top side to move this back. R, I, D, I, R, D, R, I, D, I, R, D. This is fine, now move it in kersplat. Is this better than all those parities and all those situations? So now same thing as with this, blue trapezoidal surrounded by blue and yellow, blue and red. So here's my blue and red, and here's my blue and yellow, and here's my blue trapezoidal. So I just have to move these accordingly, shuffle these around a little bit. Let's turn this around so that the blue is up. R, D. Let's move this around. R, I, D, I, R, D, R, I, D, I, R, D. Once more to line itself up to here. D, I, R, D. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to take this, move it to here, and then we'll move it top side. R, I, D, I, R, D, R, D. Okay, I'm going to move this up to here so that this blue can go to where this is. R, I, D, I, R, D, R, I, D, I, R, D. Move this back. This has been returned. This has always been fine. Oh, I've got this lined up. So I'm going to take this, move it to the bottom. All right, D, I, R, D. Okay, so now comes the dilemma of how to move this guy into here without destroying this. Well, the way that we're going to do this is first let's take this and put it next to here. So let's do a corner swap. Remember, these are all corners that we're creating. We're reducing all of these to become just corners, big blocks over here. And that's going to be a corner swap to our U, to our UI, to R, turn the puzzle, to our UI, to our U, to R. Okay, the way that this is going to work is I move it in, then I move it one more. Then I do a corner swap. When I do a corner swap, another U move will take this, move this to here. This guy will now be here so that it can come to where it's supposed to be here. So that's my usual strategy with these types of AI puzzles is I move it in, then move it once more, corner swap, then do another U. To our U, to our UI, to R, turn the puzzle, to our UI, to our U, to R, do one more turn, and look at that. This is in, and this is in, and now I've got these guys. And this is the easiest thing in the world because you have completely equivalent pieces. So equivalent are the pieces that it pretty much solves itself. So I'm just going to focus on one side. I'm just going to focus on the red side. The blue will automatically be placed because you have equivalency of pieces. So this is the time where all this false equivocation works completely to our benefit. So anyway, we have this here, we have this. Let's go ahead and move this top side. R, I, D, I, R, D, R, I, D, I, R, D, R, I, D, I, R, D. That's why I wanted to finish with these two because of all these equivalent pieces. Now with this top side, what I want to do is I want to take this and move this into where it'll match up with this guy over here. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's take this and I'm going to move it to the bottom because I'm going to want to move this around and manipulate this so that this can go to here so that when this turns over to here, it can line up with this piece here. So let's move this to here. R, I, D, I, R, D, R-I-D-I-R-D. Now, I'll tell you right now that although I'm guaranteeing a parity-free solve, it means that the reduction of parity is replaced by an increase in strategy. So that's what you have to accept, that the price of decreasing parity is increasing strategy. So we have to strategically work this out, and if you're the kind of person that does not like to memorize parity algorithms or equivocation algorithms or anything like that, but you like to strategically figure out how to do things, this is the way to go. But in any case, I'm going to take this now and move them to here. So I'm going to move this to here, because I don't care what's happening on this side. Move this to here. R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. Move this back. Take this, and we're going to move them up. R-I-D-I-R-D, R-D. Okay, now watch what we'll do. Take this, move them over here. This is all lined up. We're going to move this guy down, which will move this up in line with this. So let's move him down. R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. And again. So not a whole lot of algorithms that you need to know with this. All right, now we take this, move them back. This is reduced. This is automatically reduced, as are these. So basically what I have now is I've reduced my Megamorphix to a Pyromorphix. I've reduced a 4-layer even puzzle to a 2-layer even layer puzzle, which means no parity. So I'm simply going to solve this as a Megamorphix. So let's pick a side here. Let's say this side. We got this in, we got this in. So I'm only solving it as a 2x2. So I'm looking for the yellow and green. Oh, which is here. I just have to turn this around. R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R. Okay, so as you can see, this has been solved. Turn it upside down, and let's see, this is in. I've got to get the green, I've got to get this one to here. Well, let's see which two are in place. If I move this to here, this is in, well, we'll keep it here. So this belongs over here. So I got to swap these two. 2R, U, 2R, UI, 2R, turn the puzzle, 2R, UI, 2R, U, 2R. So this is just a 2-layer solve that I'm doing. Okay, so this is correct. This is actually correct, it's just twisted wrong. It's just turned wrong. So I'm going to move this here. This has to come to here, and this blue over to here. So another corner swap. 2R, U, 2R, UI, 2R. Turn the puzzle. 2R, UI, 2R, U, 2R. And this moves here. Okay, so all these are correct. I just have to rotate this right. So I've got to rotate this. R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D, and again, R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. Okay, take this guy, rotate him all around, and then rotate this guy back, which should get this all back to R-I-D-I-R-D, R-I-D-I-R-D. So this is in, turn it, and done. So, there it is. That is another way of solving this puzzle. In my mind, much faster, much easier to do a reduction, not to a 3x3, a completely different kind of a puzzle parity, but to a 2x2, a Pyromorphix. So there you have it. It does take more strategy, just a little more strategy. Really just 2x2 strategies, corner swaps, and RID, and that'll get you there. Anyway, any other questions regarding this puzzle? Let me know. Thanks for watching.